Google is coming off one of the most impressive smartphone design streaks in modern tech history. From the Pixel 6 to the Pixel 9, nearly every generation introduced a bold hardware refresh. New camera bars, fresh colorways, refined materials. Google wasn't afraid to reinvent the look of its phones year after year. The Pixel camera bar became iconic. The finishes became instantly recognizable. Pixel phones stood out in a sea of similar-looking slabs. But now things are changing. With the Pixel 9 and Pixel 10 looking nearly identical, much like the Pixel 4 and Pixel 5 before them, Google has officially shifted to a 2 to 3 year design refresh cycle. That means the dramatic year-over-year visual overhauls that once defined the Pixel brand are likely over. So what's next for Pixel hardware? If Google isn't going to radically redesign how its phones look every year, it needs to perfect how they feel, because right now the biggest problem with the Pixel 10 series isn't visible, it's physical. The Pixel 10 and Pixel 10 Pro are simply too thick and too heavy. After switching from an iPhone and Samsung Galaxy device to the Pixel 10 Pro for several weeks, the difference was impossible to ignore. Google's flagship feels noticeably heavier and bulkier in daily use. On paper, it may not sound dramatic. In your hand, it absolutely is. The base Pixel 10 weighs 204 grams. That's 37 grams heavier than the Samsung Galaxy S26 and 27 grams heavier than the iPhone 17. To put that into perspective, Google's official Pixel 10 silicone case with Pixel Snap magnets weighs around 34 grams. In other words, an iPhone 17 or Galaxy S26 with a case can feel roughly the same weight as a Pixel 10 without one. That's not a minor gap. That's a competitive disadvantage. Thickness tells a similar story. The Pixel 10 measures 8.6 meters thick, actually 0.1 meter thicker than the Pixel 9. Yes, Google added internal QI2 magnets for Pixel Snap support, and that's a welcome feature. But Apple also includes QE2 magnets in the iPhone 17, and it still manages to come in at just 7.95 mm thick. The reality is simple. Pixel phones are consistently thicker and heavier than the competition, and in 2026, that shouldn't be happening. Technology. Products are supposed to become thinner, lighter, and more refined over time. Samsung is pushing ultra-thin designs. Apple continues optimizing internal layouts. Even foldables are getting slimmer. Meanwhile, Pixel devices are trending in the opposite direction. This isn't just a spec sheet complaint, it's a usability issue. A lighter phone is easier to hold for long periods. It reduces wrist fatigue. It makes one-handed use more comfortable. It allows you to add a protective case or magnetic accessory without turning your phone into a brick. Considering we use our phones for hours every single day, small differences in weight and thickness add up quickly. And yet, Google doesn't appear to be prioritizing this aspect of hardware refinement. What makes it harder to justify is that Pixel phones aren't experimenting with cutting-edge materials to offset the bulk. The Pixel 10 series sticks with the classic aluminum and glass combination. There's nothing wrong with that pairing. It's proven, premium, and durable. But in 2026, aluminum and glass have been perfected by other manufacturers to deliver thinner and lighter results. If Google were using exotic materials, modular components, or radically different internal architecture, perhaps the added thickness would make sense, but that's not the case. Pixel Snap is a great addition. Magnetic accessories and QI2 compatibility are important features. But Apple introduced MagSafe 5 years ago and managed to maintain thinner profiles while doing it. If Google is going to stick with traditional materials, it needs to master them. Otherwise, it needs to innovate. Look at what other brands are doing. Samsung is pushing ultra-thin foldables. Apple has developed advanced display glass technologies like ceramic shield. Corning continues refining Gorilla Glass with anti-reflective coatings and improved scratch resistance. There are opportunities everywhere for Google to lead in materials science and structural engineering, but it's not taking them. Right now, Pixel hardware feels like it's coasting while Pixel software is sprinting. And that's the frustrating part. When it comes to software, AI tools, and optimization, Pixel phones are arguably ahead of Samsung and Apple. Google's AI features, call screening, image processing, and system fluidity are top tier. Pixel software is the reason many users switch in the first place, but hardware matters just as much. When you hold a Galaxy S26 or an iPhone 17, you immediately notice the refinement, the balance, the weight distribution, the thinness. Samsung and Apple may not radically redesign their phones every year, but they continuously polish the physical experience. Google needs to do the same with the upcoming Pixel 11 series. If the Pixel 11 launches with the same thickness, the same weight trends, and no meaningful hardware refinement, it risks losing users who are no longer willing to compromise physical comfort for software excellence. The Pixel 10 in lemongrass might be one of the best-looking phones of this generation. The camera bar remains iconic. The design language is distinctive and confident. But aesthetics alone aren't enough. In-hand feel matters. Weight is a user experience feature. Thickness is a daily comfort factor. Material refinement is part of premium positioning. If Google wants the Pixel 11 to compete head-to-head with the Galaxy S27 and iPhone 18, it must prioritize hardware optimization as aggressively as it prioritizes AI and software features. Make it thinner, make it lighter, rework the internal layout, improve material engineering, refine the ergonomics. Show the same obsession with hardware efficiency that you show with software performance. Because if Pixel continues to lead in software but lag in physical refinement, more users will start reconsidering their loyalty. The Pixel 11 is Google's opportunity to prove that design isn't just about how a phone looks, it's about how it feels every single day. If Google gets that right, Pixel could become the best all-around smartphone on the market. If not, some users are already prepared to move on.